And he comes back to the madrasa and he sees that throughout the whole Hindustan, I'm talking about Ghair Munqasim Hindustan, including India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the whole. So throughout this Indian subcontinent, the attention of people is directed towards mantiq and falsafa. Logic and philosophy, they stress so much on logic and philosophy that they are diverted away from the Quran and Hadith. So he focuses totally on Quran and Hadith. And in his madrasa, his attention is attracted to Quran and Hadith. Now when people realize this, they turn to Shah Waliullah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts this maqbuliyat and acceptance into the hearts of the people, and they gather around him, they flock to him like the thirsty flock to the water, and he quenches their thirst. And Shaykh Abdur Aziz used to say, my father was an extremely busy man. He was always engaged in teaching and educating people, and people would come to him, and he had made graduates and students specialists in every field. So whenever a student would come to him, he would ask him which field would he like to study and where he would want to specialize, and he would direct him towards that field. And he himself would exclusively teach Hadith and Quran. And then on top of that, he was a great author as well. He started writing books. And he wrote many books. First of all, he translated the Quran into Persian language by Fathur Rahman fi Tarjamatil Quran, because it was the need of the time. Like today's need, Mufti Taqi Usmani has translated Quran into English language, simple language. So similarly, he translates that into Persian language. Also, he writes many books by the name of Hujjatullah al-Baligha, one of his masterpieces. And also Al-Musawwa fi Sharh al-Muwatta, Sharh Tarajimi Abwab al-Bukhari, and so on. He was a great poet as well. He composes many very nice poems, and I like his poems. His language is very simple. He has this fluency in his language. And when he praises the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he goes on to say, إِذَا مَا أَتَتْنِي أَزِمَّةٌ مُدْلَهِمَّةٌ تُحِيطُ بِنَفْسِي مِنْ جَمِيعِ جَوَانِبِي تَطَلَّبْتُ هَلْ مِنْ نَاصِرٍ أَوْ مُسَاعِدٍ أَلُوذُ بِهِ مِنْ خَوْفِ سُوءِ الْعَوَاقِبِ فَلَسْتُ أَرَى إِلَّا الْحَبِيبَ مُحَمَّدًا رَسُولَ إِلَهِ الْخَلْقِ جَمَّ الْمَنَاقِبِ وَمُعْتَصَمَ الْمَكْرُوهِ فِي كُلِّ غَمْرَةٍ وَمُنْتَجَعَ الْغُفْرَانِ مِنْ كُلِّ تَائِبِ مَلَاذُ عِبَادِ اللَّهِ مَلْجَأُ خَوْفِهِمْ إِذَا جَاءَ يَوْمٌ فِيهِ شَيْبُ الزَّوَائِبِ. And he goes on. He begins with these words, and he goes on to mention some of the work done by the scholars of the time and different groups among the ummah. He mentions that Allah Pak sent this prophet, he gave him so many qualities, he raised his religion, he was such a nice person, and Allah Pak spread his deen throughout the globe. And then throughout the ages, different people came to elevate his deen. And he goes on to say, يُؤَيِّدُ دِينَ اللَّهِ فِي كُلِّ دَوْرَةٍ عَصَائِبُ تَتْلُو مِثْلَهَا مِنْ عَصَائِبِ فَمِنْهُمْ رِجَالٌ يَدْفَعُونَ عَدُوَّهُمْ بِسَمْرِ الْقَنَا وَالْمُرْهِفَاتِ الْقَوَاضِبِ وَمِنْهُمْ رِجَالٌ يَغْلِبُونَ عَدُوَّهُمْ بِأَقْوَى دَلِيلٍ مُفْحِمٍ لِلْمُغَاضِبِ وَمِنْهُمْ رِجَالٌ بَيَّنُوا شَرْعَ رَبِّنَا وَمَا كَانَ فِيهِ مِنْ أَمْرٍ حَرَامٍ وَوَاجِبٍ وَمِنْهُمْ رِجَالٌ بِالْحَدِيثِ تَوَلَّعُوا وَمَا كَانَ مِنْهُ مِنْ صَحِيحٍ وَذَاهِبٍ وَمِنْهُمْ رِجَالٌ مُخْلِصُونَ لِرَبِّهِمْ بأنفاسهم خصب البلاد الأجادب ومنهم رجال يدرسون كتابه بتجويد ترتيل وحفظ المراتب. And then he says in the end, على الله رب الناس حسن جزائهم بما لا يوافي حده ذهن حاسبي. Allah, who is the Lord of the universe, it is upon him and his duty to reward all these groups of people who elevated the deen of Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Then he goes on to say, فمن شاء فليذكر جمال بثينة ومن شاء فليغزل بحب الزيانب سأذكر حبي للحبيب محمد إذا وصف العشاق حب الحبائب وأذكر وجدا قد تقادم عهده حواه فؤادي قبل كون الكواكب. And then he moves on, فصلى عليك الله يا خير خلقه, and then فأشهد أن الله لا رب غيره وأنك مأمون على كل غائب. Like in the Qasida of Sawad ibn Qarib, he moves on to them, and in this way he praises Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and mentions his love for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. This is just to show, I don't have time to translate all those couplets. Anyhow, just portraying his love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is why he gained acceptance in the eyes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. While he was in Haramain al-Sharifain, he received many mubasharat, good news as glad tidings from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Many times he would see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his dream. He would benefit from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sometimes he says, once I was in the Rawdah Sharifa and I focused on the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And it appeared to me in the vision, I saw that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is sitting there, and from his heart, rays of nur and light are coming out and spreading throughout the globe. Just as sun is 93 million miles away, but its rays are everywhere on the face of the earth. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is only 6,000 miles away. So from his heart, these rays of nur are spreading throughout the globe. And I notice that they are attached to every single person who is connected to the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is learning or teaching the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He is getting this blessed nur and light from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I noticed this and I saw this with my own eyes in Mukashafa, in the vision which I saw. Then he says, "O reader of my book, you must also keep yourself attached to the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so you can get this attention and this blessed nur of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." Shah Waliullah comes back, he authors these books. In the year 1159, he is gifted with his son from his second marriage by the name of Shah Aziz Muhaddis Dehlawi rahmatullah alayh. Now Shah is a title which was given at that time, like we say Shaykh, Maulana or some other title. Shah Waliullah is the title of that time. So Shah Abdul Aziz Muhaddis Dehlawi rahmatullah alayh is born. This young son, Shah Waliullah, is also at his peak at this time after his journey from Medina Munawwara and Haramain Sharifain. So when he gets this son, he focuses attention and tawajjuh upon him, and he is raised under the supervision of his father, Shah Waliullah Muhaddis Dehlawi rahmatullahi alayh. He memorizes the Quran, finishes his early books. And among his karamat, Allahu Akbar, is that when he reaches the age of puberty, and he leads his first Taraweeh Salah in Ramadan, because he is Hafiz, and he leads the first Taraweeh Salah in Ramadan. Some pious person of that time sees in his dream that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam attended that Salatul Taraweeh. He was present, he came. His tawajjuh, his ruh, he came and he attended in that gathering of that Taraweeh. Because his father Shah Waliullah is behind him. Many other mashayikh behind him reading Taraweeh behind this young boy. And he is getting this karamat that Rasulullah's tawajjuh and his attention is directed towards him. Now we see when such a young boy at this tender age is getting this karamat and blessing of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his tawajjuh and affection, what would have happened to him after he grew up and Allah Pak took this work of deen from him? Shah Abdul Aziz Muhaddis Dehlawi rahmatullah grows up. He is only 17 when his father passes away. He has learned all the books of hadith from his father. Mishkatul Masabih, Shama'il Tirmidhi, Sunan Tirmidhi, Sunan Abi Dawud, and the first pages of Sahih al-Bukhari up to Kitabul Hajj, and the preface of Sahih Muslim. He studies all these with his father. Then his father passes away, so he completes his study with his uncle, Shaykh Mufti Ashiq Ilahi al-Fulti rahmatullahi alayhi. And in this way, his studies come to a completion, and he takes care of the madrasa of his father. And he is an author of many books. Among them is Bustanul Muhaddithin, Al-Ujalatul Nafi'a, Tafsir Fathul Aziz, and also many other books. His fatawa are very famous. His fatawa, he was a master at giving fatawas. He had a very good eloquence in speaking and in writing. And he would give very nice short fatawas, and we benefit from those fatawas. It's in a very thick volume. And his Tafsir Fathul Aziz, only the Juzu Amma and Juzu Tabarakalladhi and half of Surah Al-Baqarah in 4 volumes. He used to dictate. He was a very sick person, and he used to sometimes walk around the garden and dictate, and people would note down what he would be saying. And in this manner, he dictated his Tafsir Fathul Aziz later on in his life. So this is Shah Abdul Aziz Muhaddis Dehlawi rahmatullahi alayhi, his family, his background, where he is coming from. Now, he writes this book which is in front of us, Bustanul Muhaddithin, the orchard of the Muhaddithin. They have said here garden of Muhaddithin. I would rather say the orchard of Muhaddithin. Because in an orchard you go to pick fruits. Like my Shaykh, Maulana Shaykh Mahmud Chandiya was telling me on the way, that garden is a place where you have flowers and fruits. But in an orchard you go for fruits only. So over here you read this book to take the fruits that Shah Abdul Aziz has gathered in here, and they are ripe and they are ready to be picked. So, Bustanul Muhaddithin, the orchard of the scholars of hadith, what you call, he compiles, he writes this book. Now, it's originally written in Farsi, Persian. And then it was translated into Urdu in the year 1337 after Hijrah by Hazrat Maulana Abdul Sami' Deobandi rahmatullahi alayhi. And I have his translation with me as well, and that is the one from which I benefited, and many times I quote from there as well, because I don't know Persian, so I can't go refer to that. Dr. Muhammad Akram Sahab, he translates this book from the Persian version, and he keeps that in front of him, and the book comes in front of us. Now, Shah Abdul Aziz Muhaddis Dehlawi rahmatullahi alayhi, in his original book, he starts off with the Muwatta of Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi, because it is the most thick compilation of Masanid which is available today from the earliest works which were produced by our Akabir. And then he goes on, he mentions in there 16 different transmissions of Muwatta Imam Malik. Shah Abdul Aziz goes on to mention the biography of each and every narrator of that Muwatta, that transmission. Whether it's Yahya ibn Yahya al-Masmudi or Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, whoever he is, he mentions the biography of these transmitters. Then he moves on to Musnad Imam Azam, then Musnad Imam al-Shafi'i, Musnad Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and then he goes on to some other Masanid, and he Musnad Abu Ya'la al-Mawsili and the likes of them, Abu Muslim al-Kashi, and he moves on to the Sihah, but those Sihah which are not very famous, like Sahih ibn Khuzaymah, Sahih ibn Habban, Mustadrak al-Hakim, al-Muntaqal ibn al-Jarud, and he moves on to Sunan, those Sunans which are not famous, like Sunan Darami, Sunan Daraqutni, and all those. And then after 170 pages, he comes upon Bukhari and Muslim, Tirmizi and Abu Dawud. And when he starts that paragraph, he says that these Aimma of the Sihah Sitta are so famous that they don't need to be mentioned, because everybody knows them. However, just for achieving their blessing and their barakah, I'm mentioning them shortly in my book. He mentions the Sihah Sitta, and then he moves on to some shuruhat and commentaries of Sahih al-Bukhari, like Fath al-Bari, Sharh al-Kirmani, Sharh al-Zurqani, Sharh al-Suyuti. He goes on to them, and then he mentions some Ajza and Arba'inat, and he finishes off with the Masabih al-Sunnah of al-Baghawi rahmatullahi alayhi. So in this way, the original book was compiled. Now, Dr. Akram Sahab, he translates it from Persian to Arabic. And in there, Dr. Sahab has done is, he's kept the four Muwatta and Masani together. And after that, he has narrated the Sahih, he has mentioned the Sihah Sitta, the 6 primary sources, Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmizi, Abu Dawud, Nasai and Ibn Majah. And maybe because in order to keep in order, as we know, because the readership and the audience of this book would be different to the audience of the time when Shah Abdul Aziz was writing. I assume that this was in his mind when he was writing it. Then he moves on to, he divides everything and puts everything in order and makes it easy for the readers. He does this in Arabic. So he changes the tartib of the book, and then on top of that, he writes real nice, priceless footnotes with that as well. And in those footnotes, he has mentioned the biographies of other scholars like Sufyan Thawri, Imam Ibn Shihab Zuhri, Imam Awza'i, Ibrahim Nakhai, and whoever's name comes along, Dr. Sahab goes to a great extent, and he makes great effort in mentioning the what you call the biography, anthology of those narrators as well. And along with that, Dr. Sahab has mentioned in a very nice preface, and in the foreword, he has mentioned the way in which hadith was compiled from after the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the way in which it progressed from time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then Sahaba, and then Tabi'een, and Tabi' Tabi'een. He summarized this in a very beautiful manner. He put that all this in Arabic. And then comes along Ustada, Sister Aisha Bewley, who brings it from Arabic to English.